lot of you are enjoying wherever you're at right now. I decided to change locations because the feed wasn't good and simply ended up moving to the beach. Thought, we've done enough heavy episodes indoors. I've read off a lot of information. We can do an episode of Simply Stated, episode 3, and this is going to be season 5 odds and ends. I think more than enough of you know the material for the show. So if we're just doing a review, like a refresher show, then you'll probably be fine. Yes, it really is me here at the beach. So just remember, I'm also on OnlyFans at Deborah K, DBRAHKAY. And, you know, we'll walk around the beach a little bit afterwards, but... Oh, hold on. Sorry about that. Somebody put a pop-up message on there. Anyways, it's so rude. I'm just going to go ahead and take these off while I'm actually reading. So, I need to note for a lot of you, there was a recent series of events. I've been working at another site and had problems with some transactions, like banking transactions being literally like disappearing. And so I reported it to the proper authorities in Michigan. They've got the transactions back. But it's been a repeated issue. It's obviously someone local. I don't know if any of you have had problems with transactions that were supposed to, like, in transit, just disappeared and had to be put back. And it's really frustrating to try to get that solved. I actually looked into going to a new bank and ended up going to both Connington Bank and then also Chase Bank up in Boyne City. And all I can say about this is it was incredibly weird. And I ran into the person, Amy Reynolds, at Katherine Heigl at one of them at the Huntington Bank, and also one of the guys from DC at the Chase Bank. So it was kind of some kind of weird setup with them. But what I noticed about both banks is that, like, this quality of service was really bad. The customer service was really bad. And frankly, both banks were just total dinosaurs on their banking knowledge and information, and even crime around banking. And of course, they both asked me if they were being investigated. I said no. I was literally there to see if I could open some accounts because, I'm living in the area. I just thought, I'd like to open an account for a bank that would be more regular. So in other words, I was trying to go back to something that had not worked for me in recent years. It doesn't work for a lot of people anymore, which is a traditional bank. And nobody's really supposed to talk about where they keep their money, but as you know, most people use alternative methods and then sometimes use traditional banks and like a combination of them today in the USA. I don't know where you live in the world, but I've just found that both, like, my suspicions and opinions about Chevy Chase and Huntington Bank were true, that they were just not good banks and really didn't even seem to want my money or business, which is just weird. Like, I was in some kind of bizarro version of Pretty Woman. She goes to the store and she tries to shop, and then, the guy has to come back with her to forget the clothes. And I thought, forget the clothes, forget the bank account, and just leave. They're going to be this weird. But they were just really insulting and rude and, asked me questions about my personal life, frankly, for a bank. And that's the one thing I need to note for. It was especially the Huntington Bank had an extremely bad manager at it who was just incredibly invasive in other people's lives and yelled at people. She actually yelled at me. And I was just asking questions about a bank account to set one up. And so I frankly left. I'm not even going to bother saying she was scared or afraid. She was some kind of a weirdo, antisocial. And I found both the staffs on the banks were pretty much Russians. So pretty much, geared towards people who are Russian or Russian ancestry, not really interested in being banking for the rest of us. I would not recommend putting your money into any of those banks or either of them. They're supposed to be international banks, but with as dinosaur-like and weird as their ideas are on banking and money, it's just ridiculous. Like, it was complete with, like, one of the guys at Huntington Bank was like, wow, you sure do travel a lot, doing the aw shucks, corn cob bullshit. And I was looking at him and, like, he was very Russian, very much also looked like he was the Peace USA, and really didn't sound incredibly intelligent, but also just was very fake. So, it's a dumb thing to say to somebody. Everybody travels in the U.S., and people always travel fairly long distances, 45 minutes, an hour for work, sometimes an hour and a half. And then you have people that travel transnationally, and even in this area, and he's trying to pretend like it's weird for somebody to drive like a half hour, 40 minutes, or even an hour to go check out some banks. Like, that's life. It was bad. Really bad. So for that kind of situation, I consider and break it down to what the problem is. For the rest of you, just say bad customer service, not worth your time, archaic banking methods, and frankly not safe to keep your money in. Moving on. I just want to remind a number of people that there seems to be an awful lot of it with Thune out there. Senator Thune that some woman took. So the whole where he, like, supposedly gave the money to somebody else, and it was his wife that actually got it. Maybe it wasn't even his wife, maybe it was some other woman. I never had to stay with him if anyone needs that to be said. So there should never have been any supposed settlements for his behavior beating me if that actually has to be said. As far as the rest of you trying to continue forward with that because they keep getting dumb surges about it, get the fuck over it. It really has to be said because the rest of us are just tired of it. Anybody who's against labor trafficking, which is what that kind of behavior is towards me and other people, and the rest of it, just, get the fuck over it. None of us have ever seen that as a method for getting people their money, that's owed when they're actually being labor trafficked. It's certainly always been a method for them getting beat up on and hurt. So, that was probably the reason for simply ending those kinds of settlements. Worse, they didn't appear to be actually legal to the U.S., and mostly it appeared to be part of, Russian law. And that's what I explained already before about the bizarre Russian law schools in the U.S., the strange number of people that don't actually know what the U.S. legal system is. So in the U.S., there is no legal system where you just do a settlement after raping and beating on people and don't actually have to serve prison time. It's no such thing. And you don't have the right to support or send someone to be trafficked and put into those kinds of situations. To have a settlement case, whether you claim to work at a law firm or what, because nobody's going to believe that you work at a law firm. They're just going to say you're some shady freak. So, that you're just a dumb labor trafficker. That's what that amounts to. It's important to know. Bizarrely, I just need to go forward with this part of it. So just get the fuck over it, people. Don't bother bringing it to me or anyone else. It's just dumb. I'm obviously owed money for work that I've done, like real work. And unfortunately, it's for Endeavor Corp, and they've just simply never paid it. And unfortunately, Booz Allen Hamilton also followed for that. So is CITI. Nobody knows at this point if they would even be up for actually being allowed to pay it because it's so far over how much money owed. What everyone has decided on is we're just done with their bullshit, right? We're just done with the bullshit. And that's what it is, right? We're down to odds and ends. We'll just call it bullshit. You've had the eloquent, long, wordy explanation. Now we're going to do the simple explanation, right? So as far as what I just said is just publicly, I definitely have an account with NetSpend. The FBI is aware of it, so is the US government. They really don't have any problem with me having it. And I frankly, I'm just wondering because I did play a number of Arctic Monkeys songs, and for some reason I feel like the people at NetSpend might actually want to really get me paid for my modeling work and keep my business at this point, and that they finally decided to come forward and say that they really didn't have a business relationship with M. Gardner, that she just made that up. So I guess now you know the truth about that too, if that wasn't covered properly in previous shows. Somehow this is going to have an Arctic Monkeys tie-in to the song. Anyways, crawling back to you, that's how I feel about NetSpend sometimes. It's always there as my backup plan, but it's a bank with a lot of fees. It just isn't a completely insane one. So, I also need to let some of you know that Scott Livingston, that I discussed, the ludicrous model, has been spotted in northern Michigan. I did see Shatila, some of you know, has come forward about her experiences, lived in the Arlington area, had been up here a little bit. I think it's curious and upsetting that he's up in Petoskey because nobody would really even know what he was looking for or doing, because it certainly would be good for him to try to be around me or see me or any of us. And it just, what, trying to set something up, there's nothing to set up. I wouldn't recognize him, I wouldn't regard him, I wouldn't certainly point him out or, try to connect with him. So if that's all you needed to see, then that's it. I've already stated in the shows pretty openly that the rest of us figured the answer was, if all of you want to dress up and pretend you're the other people and play this dumb game, or from you or someone else and say they weren't supposed to say anything, then, and yet you want to be known, then we're going to go with you just didn't want to say anything. And that was the general decision made by a long list, of thousands of people when I was living in the Washington, D.C. area over a 20-year period. So that's it. That's the method, the systemic answer for the rest of you to know what to do about this stuff. There's just no point in confronting them about the fact that they're playing dress up and they're just dumb KKK members. In his case, is a member of the Russian FSB. So you really don't want to interact with them. Keep it to a minimum. I have to say, there's been some really bizarre. I'm going to change the topics again. There's been some really bizarre water-based attacks in Michigan. We have to go through this. Somebody's been using flash burns, the toilet systems, the water systems, which is typical of both Albanian terrorist groups and also Russian terrorist groups, to burn women's vaginas and behinds while using the restrooms. I'm not even going to try to get into which one of you is doing that, but I know that Kim Kardashian does it. I know that also Sam Silver out of Silver Lake, and those are aliases names, you know. Kim is also going by the name Alicia Carlin. That, I mean, quite simply, the best way to put it is that, you know, they both think this is really funny, and I've seen them laughing about it, and there's just nothing funny about it. So, I'm going to go forward with the next part. Let's see. I wonder how much time I have left. Oh, well, I'm going to get through this. So, I have to also remind you that Tulsi Gabbard is fired, and she was actually supposed to have been out of her job at the end of May 30th, and she's apparently now trying to stay in her position until June 30th, and she needs to get her ass moving. This person is in trouble for allowing a number of people to be remotely hit by MS-13 other gangs and pretending it's intel, and frankly, the whole thing is ridiculous, and she literally just needs to be, like, it's time to go. Like, don't pretend like you're going to drag it out or stay in the job. She has to go. And I'm hoping that basically her powers have been restricted at this point, and that it's just simply a matter of her packing up her stuff in her office, or some kind of bizarre saving face that she gets to stay till June 30th. But she actually needs to go. She needs to get GTFO. Isn't that what your administration likes to say, President Trump, like GTFO? So, I also need to note that the English are reporting that they're having a lot of problems with gang violence, and that people are actually squatting in homes in England, and people have gone through a number of really horrible situations, like similar to what you've seen in the U.S. with people squatting in houses and taking them from citizens, except in this case they're actually trapping people there and sometimes holding them hostage and torturing them. It seems to be a rampant issue all over England right now. I also need to note that for those of you who didn't know this, who were in the YRs, and this may be a more obscure issue, Lisa Stickett Lewis turned out to be male, and she can also appear as dark-skinned, Hispanic. I'm noting that because some of you may not be aware of some of the Signet systems, and she was the former wire and was forced out of her position because of it, and turned out to also possibly be Caroline Britton Silver of Silver Lake. They have a lot of similarities. Turned out to actually be dark-skinned Iranian males, and short and squat and fat, but fairly dangerous. So it's important to remember that they do change themselves both that way to become blonde and blue-eyed appearance women, but they can also be dark-skinned men. Just for your information, when you're trying to think about crime and counterterrorism in the U.S. and issues you have to deal with yourself, or when if you're crazy, you're not. You see somebody one day looks like a blonde, blue-eyed, fat person, the next day looks like some dark-skinned man, it's probably the same person. And I've seen a number of them identified as such. Don't confront them about it. It's really dangerous. Don't say anything. I have to know for a lot of you that, a lot of my notes don't always make sense. If one of you was to try to read even notes I write to myself or my diaries, I wrote down a lot of keyword phrasing for myself, and it's not going to make a lot of sense to you. So sometimes the stuff I write down is correct. Sometimes it's just my thoughts or flow. I wouldn't try to interpret it as exact information or even necessarily my ideas. It's just something I'm looking through. Let's see. Also, there's somebody up here who appears to be fairly similar to Ada Smirik, who I would not want to have contact with. And that person was identified by the U.S. government as also being Francie Isley, who had my mom raped, beaten, and labor trafficked and finally killed in 2001. It was part of the PCUSA, which is a really nasty part of the Russian FSB. It's a terrorist group, and they're also part of the KKK and Nazis. So it's important to note that she actually part of an organization in Florida and they're part of the U.S. that were frankly Nazi groups, and was considered to be guilty of using my alias and name to go to nursing school in Wisconsin, even though I had credits to start going to school in Wisconsin and could have gone to school to be a nurse there, but wasn't able to, was trafficked to Luther College instead. So it's important to know. And all of this is because of her sexual relationship as a child to Patrick Witzel. She is the one who, through the long investigation of the Fitz, and demanded everyone's money, and was angry because even though she had Russian heritage, he didn't marry her, instead chose to move on with Lauren Sanchez or Larry Sanchez, and then now some other woman, and never wanted to marry her and just had sex with her all those years. So she's very troubled through a person from Russia and a terrorist, and really, really unstable. And not someone anyone would have contact. I certainly don't want to have a relationship, wouldn't recognize, don't have contact with. So I have done a really funny note that Lucy Barnes, who's actually Jamie Lee Curtis, once got mad at me for wanting to read romance novels because she spent too much time surveilling me. And that might be the problem with a lot of you who are in the entertainment industry. You spend too much time getting mad at the rest of us for simply enjoying entertainment that we like. I don't think there's anything wrong with reading romance novels. It was certainly more fun than watching Halloween. I was already living through Halloween as a kid. That doesn't mean I read them today, romance novels, but for any of you who spend too much time in the industry obsessing over why somebody doesn't like your stuff or read it, it might be important to consider that they might not want to watch it because you're the kind of person who would ask them about why they aren't watching it instead. So don't get mad at people for what they consume. Start working on your game, is all I'm ever going to say about any of this. It's important to note that there is a national investigation into management methods in workplaces and people using charges to manage employees internationally, not just nationally. So don't count on Donald Trump or some other guy in the government to get you out a woman. The other crony system doesn't work really well in the U.S. anymore, and you just simply can't do it. You can't go to the workplace and start hitting people with charges. It's considered a form of physical violence, and you can't be charged for it held accountable in a court of law and actually spend time in a court, or worse, if you've engaged in too many counts of it. So it's always important to note again that there's some kind of bizarre situation with Senator Thune and also Corey. I don't know. I'm not even gonna get like the last three senators I just named in the last episode. All apparently are in some weird fight with Walmart and their parent company. Maybe it's like literally all the neocons are in some kind of fight with them, and I would assume that's probably just about every other company in the U.S. that isn't supportive of expensive wars supporting bizarre government contractors. I also got word that the Mystic Brew has asked that we all consider doing more Mardi Gras themes over the summer, that you don't have to be patriotic if you don't feel like it, but there's always plenty of love for the Mardi Gras themes of purple and green. I certainly do those if you like that better as a celebratory theme, and I know for a fact that Kingsford Charcoal put out a special summer color theme letter, which I bought. They're on sale for everybody right now in the Mardi Gras colors, which you can certainly enjoy and Mardi Gras it up over your summer as well. I'm just letting you know because it was passed along by somebody that I knew in the world of Louisiana. As far as the show goes, I think I'm going to keep this one short today, and there's plenty of material here to do another show some other time, so I'm just going to end it right there, and we'll call this done for today. So I hope you're all doing well. It's really beautiful here at the beach. I'm going to take a moment to show it to you, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut off the feed, and we'll have another show again, maybe sooner instead of longer. So, but we'll see how it goes. I'm kind of busy, and it always takes a lot of time to film, so let's go ahead and look around a little bit. It's really gorgeous here today. The surf's up, so it's super pretty. I'll just give you one last view. And remember that this is me, Deborah Kay, here at the beach with another episode of Simply Stated here live. Have a good one, and we'll talk about the dreadfulness with the FIFA Cup or FIFA Cup or FIFA or whatever the mess is in the next episode. Bye.